Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest in the sunbizweekly.com webinar series. And tonight's title is Flirting with Disaster. And if you've been watching what's been going on with Fox News, all of this sexual harassment stuff that's been coming up, we we here at the Power Group, we deal with it as well. We have to help a lot of salon owners and managers out of these kinds of situations. But as you know, this has been quite the scandal with Fox News. But just so you know, this is not where it all started. Sexual harassment really became a big issue back in 1991, and I know for many of you that are in the industry, this might have even been before you were born. Judge Clarence Thomas, who is now in the Supreme Court, was going for confirmation of his position on the court, and one of the key witnesses that came in the attempt to stop the confirmation was Anita Hill. She was subpoenaed, and Anita Hill had worked for Clarence Thomas, and she talked about some sexual harassment issues. But up until 1991, I can tell you, having worked by that time for 5 Fortune 500 corporations, no one ever talked about sexual harassment. It was just not out there. Starting in 1991, this all changed, and the whole subject of sexual harassment now was brought up to a whole new awareness level. And starting in 1991, 1992, I was having to deal with these issues with clients back then, and today we've got them again. And let me just give you six. These are just six that happened in the last 60 to 90 days, and I'm not using real names here. Obviously, I'm using fake names, but these are actual real situations. One, the over-the-top peeping Tom. I have got to share this with you guys. This is, it's funny, but it's not funny. It's certainly not funny for the victim. But just imagine this situation. In this situation, you have a couple that are about to get married in 2 weeks. They come into the tanning salon to get some color, and while she's in one of the booths, her husband-to-be takes a chair from back near the bathroom area and stands on it. And these are Euro walls that are up there in the tanning rooms. They're not sheetrock walls up to the ceiling. These are Euro walls. So what he does is, while his wife-to-be is getting a tan, he takes his cell phone and reaches over the top of this Euro wall to take pictures of a particular woman taking her clothes off and getting to get a tan, whatever. He he got caught, which is a good thing, but can you imagine him having to tell his wife-to-be that we can't get married in 2 weeks and we can't go on our honeymoon with our great tan that you've now gotten tonight, or the color you started tonight, because I'm going to be in jail. And this, this office of mine is like a set from Jerry Springer. We get this stuff. It happens. I'm just amazed at some of the things that people do. Whether they're employees of salons or customers or owners or whatever. Next one, Mr. Moneybags. This was a salon manager who is a very, very good salon manager and very nice young lady. And this gentleman kept bringing her gifts, started with flowers. And the last gift he gave her in this series of gifts was a very expensive bracelet. And she had asked me about it, and I said, no, you really need to return this, which she had already decided that's what she needed to do. But I don't think that his intentions were particularly honorable. He was 25 or 30 years older than she was. Unbelievable. And then the constant compliments, gentlemen. This was somebody that started talking about what nice hair this associate had, and it finally kept ramping up and getting more and more personal. The tacky tech is a situation we had to deal with in another chain, where we have a bed tech that's not a bed tech as you might think for bed cleaning, but a gentleman that is replacing acrylics and bulbs and that kind of thing. And his issues, personal issues, were getting more and more with a particular employee. He was trying to come back, I think, and change lamps and acrylics 3 times in 2 weeks. It was a little weird. And then the dirty old man is a gentleman that was well into his 60s, who, when he was back in a tanning room with one of the associates, started giving her a unsolicited back rub. And we eventually had to tell him, not eventually, but very quickly had to tell him he was no longer welcomed. And then an employee, which is somewhat is somewhat odd in this business because most of the time it's females working, and this is a gentleman, not much of a gentleman, but anyway, he decided that he wanted to explore the contours of one of the associates' derrieres, and anyway, it just, the stuff continues to go on. It just makes you wonder sometimes, where are people's heads? What are they thinking about? And it just never seems to end. Okay, but let's talk about some definition of sexual harassment. We have quid pro quo. So this is generally employment favors exchanged for sexual favors. And this is pretty straightforward. This is, and I saw this in some of the bigger corporations where you did have, particularly had men and women, and where a man was basically saying, if you want to get promoted, if you want to raise whatever, then you'll have an intimate experience with me. And that's, you know, that's what quid pro quo is all about. Hostile environment is the creation or allowance of an abusive, threatening work environment based on gender. Now, this is different from quid pro quo in that it is creating an environment, whether it's posters or it's language or it's bullying or whatever, that is particularly threatening to an employee. Again, we don't have a lot of quid pro quo in the tanning industry. We do have some hostile environment. The big one for our business is third-party sexual harassment, and that is inappropriate behaviors toward employees from external employees, vendors, or customers. And this does happen. You have an industry where you have 95% of the employees are female, and most of them are, you know, fairly attractive women. And, you know, you have customers that say things, sometimes even well-meaning, but sometimes it goes beyond that. And of course, you have to do something about it. So let's get into a little bit more detail here. Quid pro quo, although many people think of sexual harassment as involving a male boss and a female employee, not all sexual harassment is done by males. It is equally against the law, and this is under the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It is equally against the law for females to sexually harass males or females as it is for males to harass. So in other words, women can be involved in this kind of thing and have done this. It's pretty unusual, but it does happen. And so, again, it's sexual favors, unwanted sexual advances that condition an employment benefit upon that exchange. So I'll give you a raise, or it's the assumption by the victim, in this case, the employee, that, well, I'm never going to get a raise or I'm never going to get ahead if I don't cooperate with this person. And so it could be as much as continued requests for dates or a threat of demotion. I've had to deal with all of this with people, with clients that have brought their issues to me. And, you know, if favors are not given, then there might be a negative response on a, as far as a, you know, an evaluation, that kind of thing. I mean, there's just that kind of thing. It could also be physical harassment. That kind of goes over into hostile environment in some ways, but it also could be physical harassment. In other words, it could be that the person's being physically intimidated to, you know, be involved intimately with the harasser. Or it could be, you know, interfering with their work or their movement. It could be, and as you see, they're touching, pinching, patting, grabbing. I mean, just all kinds of stupid things that, you know, people do sometimes. It's requiring, and this, by the way, this last one, requiring an employee to wear sexually suggestive clothing. I have to tell you, a few years back, had an owner that was demanding that employees wear this suggestive clothing, and that's also a form. It's a form of both quid pro quo, and it's also a form of hostile environment. And talking about hostile environment, the second definition of sexual harassment, it could be verbal harassment. So you're harassing somebody, epithets, derogatory comments or slurs, name calling. This is creating an environment that may not necessarily be asking the employee to have sex with the perpetrator, but it could be creating an environment that is so damaging for the employee to stay there that it sometimes forces them out. But it's belittling, sexually explicit or degrading words. You can see what we've got there on the screen. It's remarks, questions about a person's sexual practices, and Oh man, I had to deal with one back in January where the perpetrator was pushing the employee to talk about their sexual practices. It just, you look at this stuff and you say, what were you thinking? It's just really weird stuff. And of course, the visual harassment in a hostile environment could be that you have somebody is putting up posters, and this was one that was back in November, I believe, where there was a salon manager that put up a poster of a Chippendale, a big poster of Chippendale dancers, and then made some comments, wrote right on the poster some rather inappropriate comments about the dancers. And one of the employees that was there was very offended by it because she had particularly religious and ethical beliefs that was really over the line. And as it works out, when we did the investigation, we found out that other employees felt the same way. So you've got quid pro quo, which is, putting it bluntly, you have sex with me and I will do nice things for you as far as your job. Hostile environment is creating an environment where the employee feels that this is just a threatening or inappropriate environment that I can't necessarily deal with. But those are two. Now, the big one, of course, is third-party sexual harassment, and that's usually caused by the interactions between salon employees and customers. It's rare that it's an salon employee that is harassing a customer. It has happened. It has happened a couple of years ago. We had an associate in a store that was really harassing one of the male customers. And then we had one before that where we had a female manager that was harassing one of the female customers. It just gets kind of crazy, you know. Now, if the investigation, and we're going to talk about investigations in a minute here, proves that inappropriate behaviors on the part of the customer, it's prudent to exclude that customer from any further access to company facilities or service. Just had to do this about 4 or 5 weeks ago with a chain where we had to tell the customer that his business was no longer required, or rather desired, I should say, at the salon. And it gets a little funky sometimes because people will deny. And when you're doing an investigation, we'll talk about that in a bit here, you've got to listen to all the information, you've got to take down written statements, and then eventually you have to make a decision who you think is telling you the full story. Because to start with, it usually is a he said, she said, or she said, whatever. Third-party sexual harassment can be kind of dangerous for a business because we have all these very attractive women working for us, and we do have a few men that come into the salon, and certainly we have vendors coming in, service providers, and so it can get a little crazy. Now, when we wanted to take this gentleman out of the salon 5 weeks ago, we notified him by email or phone that he had lost his privileges, and then we did refund his current month's tanning cost. He was not happy and claimed that our employee was not telling us the truth, but by doing an investigation, we found out that other employees had felt that they had been harassed by this man too. He was he was doing back rubs on this one employee, and wasn't restricting him to back rubs. It was also a suggestive conversation, and our employee ran out of the tanning room and immediately took that to her manager. Anyway, we got into that in an investigation. So you have, as an owner or a manager, you have the right to exclude troublesome customers or vendors from the salon, which is legally private property. So you don't have to let anybody just continue to come in there, because it's, that's your right who you want to leave in the let come into the salon. Okay, now on avoidance. The way to avoid some of the sexual harassment issues that go on is you establish first a no tolerance policy for all employees. That is, employees toward each other, but then you also have to accept that you want the employee to understand that that's a no tolerance policy from customers and vendors as well. You need to distribute this policy so everybody knows that you have it. One of the issues with a lot of salons nowadays is that they have a handbook. A few still, I think a percentage, about 15%, best guess we can get don't have a handbook. But for those that have a handbook, they may have something in their handbook about sexual harassment, but probably not third party. We just added that to a client just in a week, the last week and a half or whatever. And so you need that third party policy in there. And then you need to distribute the policy, as you see the second bullet point there, and you have to have all the employees acknowledge the policy. Acknowledge meaning like if when they first start to work for you and you give them a handbook, you should have an acknowledgments page that when they sign it acknowledges that they've read the handbook and understand the policies of employment at your salon or salon chain. Now, since most people out there don't have third-party sexual harassment or maybe sexual harassment at all in their handbook, you should issue a separate page to every employee on third party, which defines what third party sexual harassment is and what employees can do about it when they feel that they're being harassed by a customer or a vendor or whatever, and have them sign that page and return it so you've got it in your files, that they know what it is and they know what to do about it. So that's having all the employees acknowledge the policy. And of course, educating the employees about harassment is a good idea. What it looks like and how to report it, because there are just some of these young ladies that come to work for us that have never, this might be their first job or second job, and maybe the employer they had before never really told them about that. And so it's up to us to educate them. We're not looking for trouble. We're not looking for employees to be overactive and over sensitive about these kind of things, but the best way to keep your salon and you as an owner out of court so you can't get sued for sexual harassment is to educate your employees so they know what real harassment is, and so they're reporting it in the correct way. And then, of course, immediately investigate all reports of incidents. You can't let something like this go on. You have to investigate. Okay, so advise your employees that if sexual harassment occurs, when it's possible, and they don't have to do this, you should not hold your employees to where this is a necessity, but you might suggest to them that they should confront the harasser and attempt to persuade him or her to stop. Now, some of your employees are going to feel, I don't want to do that. This old person or whatever, or this young person, whatever, is harassing me. I don't really want to do that. I don't want to talk to them, and that's fine. They then should take it up to management, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Because sometimes if they do say something to the harasser, if they say, I'm sorry, Mr. So-and-so, but I'm not comfortable with this conversation that we're having, and I think we should not be having this in the future, that may stop them. The harasser may not even be aware that what they're doing is inappropriate. They may think they're just being friendly. So sometimes that simple confrontation will end the situation, and that's really what we're trying to do here. Sexual harassment situations are similar to security issues in the salon where there's money missing or inventory missing. What you want to do is you want to stop the problem, stop the bleeding, if you will, stop the trauma for employees. And so the sooner that you handle it, the better that it is. And you don't want it to go on. So if you know if an employee thinks that they're being harassed by a customer or somebody or by another employee, don't wait 4 days or 5 days. Get into it right away. Have somebody from senior management do an investigation. Okay, so to report sexual harassment, employees should contact salon management. So if I'm an associate and I feel like I've been harassed, let's say by a customer, again, we're talking third party, I should contact my salon manager, and this is part of the policy that you put out. It describes to the employee what sexual harassment, particularly third party, is, and it tells them that if they feel that they have been harassed, to go to the salon manager. Now, if they feel that the salon manager is either the harasser or they feel that the salon manager doesn't want to do this because this is a good customer, quote unquote, or they just don't want to be involved in it, then we have to let employees know that they can take it to a member of the senior management team. That's very important. It's really important where sexual harassment lawsuits, where they get into, it gets really sticky, is when we have not let the employee report this to a level of management that's going to do an investigation. We don't want to do that, because then the problem is not so much the harasser, it is the company not taking the right action. And we don't want to retaliate against them. You see bullet point number 2, sexual harassment or retaliation can be reported in writing or verbally, but you don't want to retaliate against the employee because they came to you with a harassment issue. Now, later on when we do the investigation, if you find out that the employee, erroneously or falsely reported a sexual harassment situation, which is unusual, because most of the time when we deal with one of these investigations, we find that sometimes there's not a level of harassment that we think justifies, say, whether it's termination of the employee or termination of the customer. And a lot of times we do find that it's there and that we do have to do something about it. But the last thing we want to do is have any kind of retaliation against the employee for reporting it. An employee may report such activities, though they were not the target of harassment. Now, what that bullet point means is that, let's say that you work in the salon and somebody else is being harassed by a customer, and it makes you uncomfortable. It gives you a feeling of lack of security because you're thinking about, well, why is this person, and let's just assume it's a man for a moment here, this person is harassing my fellow employee, and either management's not done something about it or the employee has not done something about it, and I'm uncomfortable with it because I might be the next one who is harassed by this. And so that employee can report that activity to themselves, that they may not have been the target of the harassment, but that made them feel very uncomfortable. Okay, so an investigation should be conducted and appropriate action taken. This is part of your policy statement for you to tell your employees that an investigation will be conducted and appropriate action will be taken. Now, here's a good quote for you to put in there. The company will make every effort to maintain the confidence of all such investigations, but cannot guarantee such confidence as it cannot guarantee the discretion of all participants. And I got to tell you guys and gals, whatever, that once this kind of thing happens, it's hard to keep it confidential, because the next thing you know, one employee is talking to another employee about that they reported this, and then if you're getting statements from the alleged victim and from witnesses, and the next thing you know, everybody's talking about it. But I got to tell you, if you don't do an investigation, there's going to be a lot more talk about it, because you're going to really mess up the operations of that salon if an employee feels that they can be harassed and management doesn't do anything about it. So then after you've done the investigating, you should conduct an interview of all the parties to attempt to validate the written statements. So this is, you want to get written statements from everyone that's involved. The alleged victim, you want to talk to the alleged perpetrator, any witnesses involved, but you also want to talk to them verbally, because you want to make sure that what they're saying verbally is consistent with what they've written. And you do want those witness statements, you want them in writing, because you want them in your file. You don't know that if an employee is with you, claims sexual harassment, and leaves your employment, you don't know that they might not bring up a suit against you later on for not conducting an investigation properly. So you want to have as much in writing as you can, which includes not only the investigation, but how you handled the final actions that you're taking for both the employee and for the alleged perpetrator. Okay, so on completion of the investigation, senior management should decide on the validity of all statements and decide as to the guilt or innocence of the alleged perpetrator and any appropriate disciplinary action to take. Now, your appropriate actions can vary from warnings up to terminations of the guilty employee. Much of what is done depends on several factors, such as the degree of infraction and the history of similar behaviors. Now, this is going to be kind of interesting to some of you that may have been through a situation like this, and you're wondering, well, if you've got somebody that's guilty of harassment, is there a law that says that you immediately have to terminate them? There is no laws that say what you have to do as far as appropriate actions. The EEOC does not say that you have to fire somebody that's guilty of sexual harassment. From a practical point of view, it makes a lot of sense to do it, depending upon the degree of the infraction and a history of similar behaviors. Now, one of the people I mentioned earlier when I used the name Dean, who was commenting and about another associate's backside, this was, we felt after investigation, we felt that there was enough information there that we could terminate him, but the employee that was the alleged victim felt that there was more innocence to it than there was intent to be harassing to the employee. So after we did the investigation and we talked to the victim felt that this was not something that required the employee being terminated. So it's not that every time that you have somebody that you think is guilty, whether it's the employee or the customer, that you have to terminate the relationship with them. I would say from a practical point of view, if you think this was a pretty inappropriate situation, I would err on the side of termination as opposed to letting it go, because it's, if you're afraid that you're going to lose a good customer, believe me, it's not worth keeping that customer and letting your employees think that people can get away with that sort of thing. Okay, the law is governed by the EEOC. It is not mandated by law, as I said before, that a guilty employee be terminated, and it's got to be weighed against commitments and the cessation of harassing actions. So maybe this was, well, like with Dean, the person I was mentioning before, it was just kind of a little bit of innocence, whatever. But in all cases, the investigation's outcome should be documented, as I mentioned before, with statements and investigation conclusions. And that includes, by the way, that you talk to the employee that is the alleged victim, and you tell them what was happening, what you've done, so they understand. You may also want to put out a statement to them and saying, here's what we've done, and this is what we're going to do going forward here, and actually have them sign that piece of paper so you've not got acknowledgement. What I'm trying to do in this webinar is to protect you as salon owners and managers from sexual harassment claims, whether they be justified or not. So the more that you can have your investigation and the situation documented and signed off by employees, whoever's involved in it, the better off that you are. Okay, so let's talk about prevention. Starts with education and acknowledgments. Again, and this is a sample, by the way, of what your acknowledgement statement would say. All employees by signature on this acknowledgement form agree that they have reviewed this policy on harassment and understand the various definitions of harassment and how to report such an issue. Their signature also acknowledges they agree and understand the possible consequences of either falsely reporting harassment as well as the penalties, including possible termination of an employee guilty of harassment. And that also relates to customers as well. All right, prevention, again, stated company policy. You want to know, you want this in your handbook. If an employee is found guilty of sexual harassment, they may be personally liable for monetary damages. And here's something that most people wouldn't think of. But if a sexual harassment lawsuit comes up and somebody is suing your salon company, they can also jointly and severably not only sue you, but they can sue the employee if there was an employee involved in harassment. They can sue them as well, as they could also try to sue the customer that had been, if the customer was harassing. So there's a lot of cost here. And again, also part of the stated policy. In addition, this company will take disciplinary action. Termination is one possible action against any employee. So we're trying to not scare employees, but we're trying to let them know that harassment is a serious thing, and we're not going to take it lightly. Now, the biggest cost when you're talking about that sexual harassment can be costly is low morale, because I got to tell you, when one of these things hits the fan, that's all everybody is talking about, and it produces low productivity and a potential huge PR issue, and of course attorney's fees. The PR issue back in 1991, it would have been one thing because the internet was not running back in 1991, at least not that I remember. There might have been web TV in the early 90s, I think, or something like that. But it's not like it is today. So if somebody feels like they're harassed and the company, let's say it's an associate working in the salon, and they feel that the salon company is not taking this seriously, they can go on the internet and they can talk on Facebook or wherever about their issues they have where they work, and it just becomes horrific. So that's why you want to go after sexual harassment issues quickly and effectively and end them as quickly as you can. And of course, there's always the issue of large attorney's fees. So I've gone through this kind of quickly. I didn't want to spend more than an hour on all of it. You can go back and you can, of course, review this on Biz Weekly. You can go through the outline. And if you have any issues that you feel are not answered by all of this, you can certainly email me. We, of course, the Power Group, we deal with all aspects of human resource issues. I've been doing this now since 1968, so that's 49 years I've been managing people. Now, as I said, we didn't know anything about sexual harassment until 1991, but boy, since then, in the last 26 years, I've had to deal with it quite often. And of course, we get involved in marketing with both traditional and social media. This year has been a heavy year for us in buying radio. I've been buying radio since 1970, so that's one of my specialties. And of course, another specialty is salon revenue analysis. I bet you this year alone I've probably done 40 or 50 different salon companies' analysis on where they're getting their revenues from, whether EFTs and the level of EFTs. So we do a lot of that, including we do mystery shopping programs. And as I said, EFTs, we get into the pricing and rewards. Rewards has been a big thing we've been doing this year. We've done a lot of different rewards programs, and it's working, which is just really exciting because by taking what was a standard rewards program before and making it a lot more attractive to customers, it's helped us sell more EFTs on the front side, and it's helped us avoid cancels on the back side. So these are just some of the things that we deal with, and you can see my email address there. You can contact me whether you want to talk about the sexual harassment information you're getting tonight, or you want to talk about what you see on the screen there. Would please invite you to do so. And of course, I'm going to ask you, don't miss out. We have a lot of content on Biz Weekly. We are the only trade magazine that gives you new news every week. And so when something is happening in the industry, if there's an FTA decision, anything else like that that's going on, you'll see it on sunbizweekly.com before you'll see it on any other trade, particularly trades that are mailed to you. So we have had, in the last 15 months that since we started Biz Weekly, we've had more than 12,000 unique viewers to our site. So we're quite excited about that. And for those of you that are subscribers or come on to sunbizweekly.com, we want to thank you very much for helping us be a very successful new launch. And it's information you need. You really do. And we try to give you that every week. So we want you to be profitable, and I'm too old to change industries, so I want you guys to stay around for a long time. And now on this, we get done here, we would like your feedback. We'd like you to send us information in the Biz Weekly. You know, if you thought that this sexual harassment webinar was meaningful and you got something out of it, or if there's things that we didn't answer in this webinar, let us know that too. We really need your help, please. And again, I want to say thank you for joining us. Here's our contact information for both Biz Weekly and for myself. So I hope that you I hope that this has been a great peak season for you. We've had some fantastic results with our customers this year. The ones that started on repricing their EFTs and repositioning them are starting to now have their first feel of a peak season. But those that we worked on last fall, and that's what I would say to you, don't wait. If you feel you need help, get it now. don't wait, because when people come to me in March and April, it's a little difficult to get a piece of the peak season. But on the other hand, it's never too late to reposition your salon and your success. So thank you for being with us, and just give us that feedback and keep coming to sunbizweekly.com. And my true wish is that every day you're getting slammed at your salon. So have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.